Bike. That's my definitely my favourite song from Jesus is King. Follow God. I was listening to that shit today. I was in a real fucking bad mood, and I put Follow God on, and it fucking cheered me right up. That bit at the beginning, just all of it. It's a fucking good song, man. I didn't love Jesus is King, to tell you the truth. I like the idea. I respect the idea. I respect Christianity, and above all, Yeezy. But didn't really enjoy the album. I found it kind of boring, to be honest. But that song, man, what a banger! I'm sure there's some other real good stuff on there. I haven't really given it much time. But yeah, I want to talk today about things I wish I'd done differently in my career. Or as I might sarcastically title it, things I wish I'd done differently in my career, because it's not really been a career, hence why I wish I'd done many things differently. And I think these things might be useful for other people to learn from, and I actually really genuinely hope other people don't make the same kind of stupid mistakes I made. So, yeah, it might be a bit of a vague video. I don't have an exact list of things, but in my mind I'm kind of thinking there's so many of them that this will just be part one anyway. So yeah, I mentioned a lot about networking in another video, and that is a major thing I wish I'd done differently, but it's very, very complicated and difficult depending on what type of person you are. Obviously for some people it's just like yeah man, hi, fuck yeah. Yeah. But then for some of us things are a little bit more sheepish. Yeah, that I understand why it was so difficult for me, because of just bad experiences with people, and I don't really trust people, and I certainly don't trust groups of people. I probably trust individuals a little bit too fucking much, but groups of people, I'm like, so I guess if I'm being honest with myself, I'm kind of like afraid of them, and it's made me probably act inappropriately at times, and sort of either lash out, sorry, I'm going to get my grinder, or whatever else. Yeah, perfect example, weed. Probably wish I'd done a little bit less of that throughout my life and career. It's hard to know that. I don't know, and I'm like kind of afraid to quit, which probably means that I should. But I worry that I'll turn into a psycho if I stop smoking weed. To be honest, I might try and move this because it's a bit weird for you to not be able to see my face. This is a bit strange, though, isn't it? It's like it's kind of like I'm sort of seducing the mic, like I'm kissing its neck. Yeah. Perhaps these type of uncomfortable jokes and antics are why networking has been difficult for me historically. But yeah, anyway, yeah, weed and drugs in general, fucking goes without saying, obviously, for a lot of people, that it's like not a great thing to invest all your time and money into. And for years, that was really all I did. But at the same time, I do believe that there is quite a lot you can get out of it creatively. Not that everyone does, and I think like a lot of people shouldn't ever do drugs or smoke weed, but I think they can be pretty amazing creatively. Even like Brian Wilson, who I would say, I say this knowing that I don't know his life, but I think he sort of misappropriates the word I'm looking for. I don't know. I think he's been convinced that acid made him crazy, and that acid broke his brain, because he didn't think that at the time. And over the years, more and more, it's like, yeah, I took acid and I lost my mind. But what they don't mention is that he took acid, and the guy who gave him acid, he said that Brian never really went crazy, and that he pretended to be crazy because he hated touring and he hated the pressure of being in the Beach Boys, and because they used to kind of bully him and like force him to work when he didn't want to. So he kind of pretended to go crazy, and that acid was a convenient way of doing that. I don't want to be like disrespectful, but I do get that feeling a little bit with Brian sometimes, to be honest. And some of the stories you hear of his like crazy antics, they're a little bit like when someone goes crazy in like a Tintin book, you know, where like they act all wacky and zany and they do kind of like zany things. And he did do legit, like, I understand totally the man was ill. Like, I really do. Like, I'm not trying to, I feel like I'm in like uncomfortable territory here, because it's horrible when someone's been through all that to try and like be dismissive of it. I guess what I'm saying is I think some of it was not real, or some of it was exaggerated. But if somebody feels the need to do that, then there's possibly a very big problem anyway. So it doesn't mean that they're not crazy or they're not unwell or they don't need help. But it can still mean that some of the stuff they're doing is perhaps a little bit performative. And what people forget is that some of that stuff with him was like not very nice for other people, wasn't very nice for his wife or daughter, wasn't very nice for people like Van Dyke Parks, who I think had quite bad experiences around Brian. And it was a bit, you know, socially weird. I mean, look, the story, for example, Paul McCartney told of like, they were hanging out and they're having a nice time, there's lots of musicians hanging out, and Brian put a big fishbowl on his head as a joke. And he was like running around the room and like no one really cared because they were sort of having, you know, a normal night and hanging out. And he was like running around the room with the fishbowl on his head trying to get attention. And then he bumped into a wall and the fishbowl broke. And he like screamed and ran away. And Paul was worried. So he went upstairs much later. I think he waited a bit and he went upstairs. And as he was getting upstairs, he heard sobbing, and he looked around the corner of the door, and like Brian was just sobbing to himself in the bedroom. Which that doesn't illustrate my point really. That it kind of does the opposite. But you can imagine it might be a little bit annoying. And there were times where he would like force people to do things, like, and some people seem quite angry about it, and I can understand why. But I really didn't intend to talk about this. I'm sorry. Yeah, so fuck was I talking about? Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson been crazy. Oh yeah. So there's this narrative that the acid made him crazy, but what they didn't mention is that it was a time when he sniffed so much cocaine that he ruined his voice. And he smoked so many cigarettes. Did I say smoked so much cocaine? Snorted so much cocaine and smoked so many cigarettes. That's why his voice, if you hear from like, I think starting at around Smiley Smile, he's not the same. He's just not the same voice. Like, and he still was very talented and great, but his voice kind of died. Like, he used to have the most beautiful falsetto and like a really good range, and that all kind of went away at some point. And he still had the same emotional quality to his voice, but yeah, he destroyed his voice. And I know that doing enough cocaine to do that like would destroy most people mentally, or not destroy them, but seriously impact them mentally. And he was also eating a loaf of bread a day. Apparently he used to eat a loaf of bread and a pack of eggs every morning at one point. And then he would sniff so much coke, like he was like trying to kill himself with it. And it was actually around that time, or not long after, where he started hearing all these voices and seeing demons. And then they were like, oh, it's the acid you took. It made you crazy. Because I think there was a bit of a pushback against like the kind of hippie shit he was getting into. And the hippies he was hanging around with, one of whom was the guy who gave him the acid, who says that Brian didn't really go crazy and that he just didn't want to tour. He would say that, I suppose, because who wants to be known as the guy who fucked up Brian Wilson with acid? But I don't buy the idea that he took acid once and it made him crazy for the rest of his life. I think also he already had problems before then, and I think all the other shit he went through and all the obesity and cocaine and crazy lifestyle probably really didn't help. And then obviously Eugene Landy came along. Double-edged sword, Eugene Landy. Anyway, yeah, I should really have titled this pointless video on Brian Wilson, giving you Brian Wilson info that you can get elsewhere. But check out the book Catch a Wave if you're interested in Brian Wilson. Fucking good book. Really good, honestly. So yeah, the drugs and stuff, I mean, that used to take days at a time out of my schedule. And like MDMA, for example, I used to abuse MDMA heavily. I think I caused permanent damage. And I used to take it every weekend, and that fucks you up for 3 days at least. Really more. You're not really at your best afterwards. But really, like, yeah, it's not a good sort of... It didn't do any... I never created anything while I was on it. You know, it did sometimes inspire thoughts that were... I mean, when I first started doing MDMA, I was like so closed off. I was in my late teens, and I was like so closed off and weird. And me and my mate used to do it. Me and my mate Toby, and I didn't really need to say his name, but me and him used to do it, and like we were really closed off, and we hung out before that. We used to just smoke weed together. We never we didn't really talk to each other. We lived in the same town, and neither of us knew anyone else, so we used to just smoke bongs together all day, and we kind of like didn't really get on. We got on okay, but like it was a frosty atmosphere, and we didn't really know each other that well, and we didn't really talk about anything proper, and we just smoked weed all day. Then we started doing MDMA, and we both like fucking fully opened up as people, and it was really amazing. And we used to we'd tell each other these things, and we became, for a year or so, like incredibly close. And I really value that time. It was really good. But I just continued, and like he kind of grew out of it a little bit, and I just wanted to continue doing MDMA all the time, and I was so dependent on it for happiness, and I hated the feeling of it wearing off so much. I still do. I don't really take hard drugs a lot anymore, but still, the feeling of them wearing off, like, it just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I fucking hate it. I get so like... I just it's a control, you know. I just want to like hold on to like the good times and stuff. I think it's just like a sort of like a microcosm of death, but it really but I have such a good time on drugs, you know, like, and it really bothers me when it's time for it to end. So yeah, I took that for a really long time. I took it for years, and you know, I met my girlfriend, and we started taking it all the time together, like every weekend. Oh, it makes me sick to think about, to be honest. It really does. It makes sometimes when I think about MDMA, I start to gag. I think because my body, like, there were times that, the more and more I start to abuse it, when I get a bag and I'd smell it, and literally I'd just be like, I know it smells bad, but like, I never had that reaction before, and I'd go like to put a bomb of it in my mouth, and I would feel my body just be like, no, like trying to like expel it before it had even entered me, because some part of my brain was just like, no more. Can't handle any more MDMA. And then, you know, I end up becoming completely fucking mentally broken. So, yeah, that I would say was very bad. Cocaine, similar. I got very little creatively out of cocaine. The best things I got out of cocaine creatively were the depressions I would get into afterwards. Sometimes I would kind of make good stuff, but no one really wants to hear that anyway. And it again would take days out of the schedule, and you can tell yourself like, oh, but it was an interesting experience, blah blah. You could have had a fucking interesting experience on your own at home, learning new stuff, watching things, making things, meeting people, and getting to sleep at a regular hour, and not staying up for like 4 days trying to fucking come, like, you know. Yeah, I think if you're like partying a lot, alcohol as well. That said, alcohol was pretty useful for me creatively early on, I think. Very harmful to my life, and I don't really drink now, but it was good. It was good in some ways. Like, there was a sort of Bukowski-ish quality to my work back then, and I think alcohol often gave me the confidence to record, because I was just so uncomfortable about all of it, and it helped. But that was also drinking whilst work. I was drinking at home whilst making music. I wasn't really like partying. And I do think like, yeah, partying and stuff, to put it all under one umbrella, you know, like I didn't really party when I did drugs. It would just be me and my girlfriend, or me and a friend, or me and like two friends maybe, you know. That would be a party if it was like 3 of us there. That would be an event. Yeah, that, all of that under that umbrella, like, you know, sessions and stuff. You've got to ask yourself, like, what does this really do? So I say that you have amazing, beautiful times a lot of the time, and it's like really good, and you know, connect with people and stuff. I'm not trying to like criticize it overall as an activity really, but I'm just saying, if you do that every weekend, if you've gotten into the habit of like getting hard drugs every weekend, or just getting hammered and doing the same things over and over again, what's the point? You know, like what's it going to do? It's not going to help you anyway. So if you're wondering why your career's not working out and you're still doing that shit every weekend, then don't wonder why your career's not working out. Just fucking cut it out and see what happens. Maybe things will be better. Or don't take my advice, obviously. But, well, yeah, just, there's no but to that. So, yeah, that I really wish I had done less of, because it would have given me a lot more time to work on things. Relationships, difficult topic. I'm not 100% sure where I stand on this, because I just got out of one, like a very long one, like a couple of weeks ago. Hence why my fridge and washing machine are in my living room. Yeah, similar to drugs, in some ways it was very useful and inspiring, and I do feel there's a lot of music made by single people, and there's a lot of like rap in particular that's just about like fucking and stuff, and like, not that I don't talk about fucking, but it was quite good to be, I think, to have a different perspective and more of like a family kind of perspective in my music, I guess. And like, I do feel like it added something pretty good in a way to my music, and also you learn from people that you're around and you inspire each other in various ways. And in some ways she was pretty cool and like helpful about things, and we made videos together and stuff. But it was also a very, very, very time, energy and emotion consuming relationship, more than normal, I think. And even like relationships that have a lot of fighting and stuff, like that are quite bad, I would say times that by about 5. Seriously, like I'm not even being hyperbolic. Like I had probably one of the most like difficult relationships I've ever heard of, and that doesn't mean it wasn't nice. We had some really, really, really good times. Even thinking about it now makes me feel a little bit emotional, because we were having big arguments today, even though we're broken up. We had some really good times, but so much time, like just gone, you know. The amount of time like fighting and figuring things out and this and that, just gone. Like no music done, no work done, just like at times probably like 20 or 30 hours a week I would say wasted on negativity. Like that was in the earlier days, but like 20 or 30 hours a week sometimes wasted, and that's quite hard to accept now, to be honest, as, you know, a 28-year-old whose washing machine and fridge are in his living room. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and not that I'm saying that it's bad in the grand scheme of things in the world. I fucking love having my own place, and I fucking love, you know, like I'm so grateful like for everything, but it's not what I aimed for at this point in my life, you know. So it is hard for me sometimes to look back and think of the hours I wasted on something that is now finished. And 8 years is a long time, and I thought at times we'll be together forever. And you might be in a bad situation and thinking, oh, but I love this person. Probably, in the same way I say that most people's relationships are not as difficult as ours, I would also say most people, from what I could tell, probably didn't like love each other as much as me and my girlfriend did, and probably don't like necessarily have as much in common and have as much fun stuff going on. Like, people always used to say it about us, and like when we broke up, people were like, what the fuck, because like we were kind of like a duo and we were like very fun together and stuff. But I don't know what the fuck my point was, but all those hours, yeah, it's kind of, that's what I was going to say is, you might be thinking, but I really love my girlfriend and I really, alright, well, I know in the past a lot of people used to say, not to me, but generally they would be like, if you're in a relationship and you're trying to pursue music, you just have to get out of it, like, it's just a distraction. And I was just like, nah, there's no fucking way, like, and in hindsight, I think, like, apart from like my mum and dad, all I really have is myself ultimately, and like all you really have is yourself, and it is pretty important to look out for yourself. And if you're desperate to succeed in music or art or whatever, and you think your relationship might be holding you back, if I knew you personally, I'd probably be like, get out. I'd probably just really seriously, strongly advising you to do so. And I kind of wish somebody had done that for me, although I know I wouldn't have listened. And I know I would have found the thought impossible. And when you're in love and everything, it's like, it's hard to really think that way. But certainly now I know that even within a couple of weeks, I've just been, like if you look on my Instagram, Olaf Music Instagram, just Olaf Music. My handle isn't Olaf Music Instagram. I'm just not being very clear. Every time I'm on my own, I'm bored. It's the evening where I'd normally be like either fighting with her or like playing computer games with her or watching TV with her. I don't want to do any of those things by myself. When I'm by myself, all I want to do is work, and I like doing it. So at night, I'll just be making Instagram snippets of like practicing songs, mixing things, doing these videos, for example. Like, part of the reason I'm doing this is because I feel fucking bored and lonely, and loneliness and boredom are very, very, very good motivations for making art. So give it some serious consideration, but I say that knowing that realistically I'm not going to be able to fucking change your mind about whether or not you should be in your relationship, and I shouldn't be able to anyway because I don't fucking know. And I know that in many ways mine was really good for me creatively and just in general, and I also know that I don't yet know. I don't have perspective on it yet, like it's pretty recent. I don't really know. It's making me kind of depressed to think about, to be honest. But yeah, that's another big one. Another thing, organization, like serious organization, and more important than that in a sense, or easier, is like, in the early days, I didn't think the presentation of things mattered at all. And I had this attitude of like, I'm a pure artist and I just like make it and people need to fucking, and like, I just never tried to portray any kind of image. I never tried to like make sure my social media pages were good. I never tried to be consistent with like the kind of the aesthetic of things. I was always annoyed by the concept of aesthetic, to be honest. Like, it used to make me angry. I think partially because I couldn't do it. I didn't have a knack for it. And also because I do feel style over substance is somewhat of an issue. And mine was kind of the opposite. It was like substance over style. And maybe it was a little more substance than people might have wanted and not quite enough style at times. So I never bothered with stuff like that, and I never cared of like how I was presenting myself. I just thought, I'm really fucking good at writing and people will just respect that and it won't matter, and that's all that matters, and I do whatever the fuck I want. I'm fucking Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, I had to get to that point. I don't know, also maybe he didn't, but he's the exception, not the rule. So I never worried about stuff like that, and I wish I had, because I see people where they start and from day one they've got like a kind of not just an aesthetic, but like a system, and like everything is consistent, and they use the same. It's not that the images are boring or monotonous, but they have a style of image that they'll use for everything, and they'll kind of, you see it with a lot of people. They kind of, obviously with a lot of bigger artists, but you look like Tyler the Creator or someone, like early on he kind of had like a vibe, and he's altered that vibe and changed it, but it's kind of progressed in a way that you can map it and it makes kind of linear sense. And all the album covers could go next to each other. In fact, a really cool thing he did is he has like 3 covers for every album, and there'll be like each one kind of, for each album he has, there's like 3 types of covers, so they kind of match. I don't know how to explain it properly, but he has like an A, B, and C for each album, for the album covers, and all the A's will all kind of match each other, and all the B's will all match each other, and all the C's will kind of match each other. And it's really cool. And stuff like that I think is great. And I've seen other people where, the first single they upload to YouTube, it's got like a really good artwork and it makes sense and it makes people think this person's legit, and then the next one comes out and it's the same, and they know kind of, not that it's predictable, but they kind of get, it invites people into a world to some extent. And it took me a really long time to accept that as a useful thing, and as something that's like helpful to the audience and is a good thing to do. And I wish I'd accepted that earlier. I think being as organized as you can, or as thoughtful as you can about your aesthetic and how other people will receive the things that you put out, is really important. Which then brings me back to organization, which in all of life is so important, and I still need to sort that out in my own life, really. Like, I know that I waste so much time by not having systems for doing things, and by not I have this mass of Fruity Loops project files, and it's just like an endless list that I'll die, and this will just be some fucking poor bastard will have to like go through all of it, or maybe no one will, but fingers crossed, at least, enough where someone will do that. But I'm sure one of my brothers will do it. They're older, but hopefully I'll die first. At least there'll be someone to look through my... sorry, I know what I'm saying. He's making these morbid, self-deprecating jokes. Yeah, so I look back and I think if I had, from the early days, I'd had a folder that was like, like scrap, or like, shitty, half-finished beats. Then one that was like ones for recording, and then one that, one that was like originals, and one that was like samples, and all the different folders, and I'd saved things. And one thing I fucking wish I'd done was tagged files. You can tag files with like tags for when you search them, so you can put like mellow or upbeat or like dark, or suitable, some tag that will say it will go well with vocals, or something like that, like all these different tags. And then when you need things, you can look through in that way. And you could even I don't know if you could do a star rating on Windows. I think maybe you can. I wish I'd done that in a way, given all my beats star ratings, because at the moment it's just a heaving mass of badly named shit that's like indistinguishable from the rest. And a lot of it really is shit, and then some of it, unfortunately, or in a way, unfortunately, is really good. And I can't really, it's going to be such a joy. I keep thinking like, in a month or so, I'll just look through it all, and that day never comes, because who the fuck wants to do that? So being really organised early on, and part of that is, like I said in the video about having long-term plans, like I think part of that is just accepting that this is a long process. So part of the reason I just would be like, I'd be like, okay, sick, I've made this beat, fucking save it. Like, now it's time to, release it, and I'm about to get famous tomorrow. I never thought like I might want to know where this is, because, or I never thought, I don't know, a lot of things. I didn't think about the future enough, and I think it's so important to do. I really do. So organisation in that respect would have been really good. Organisation in my personal life. And I think that comes down to really small things. For example, you've got all these like monthly outgoings from your bank, and you're like, oh yeah, I should really cancel my subscription, and you know, yeah, if I bought this piece of equipment instead of renting one every time I need it, it would save me money over the year, but I don't really want to like cut back on weed enough to save the money to get the thing. Fucking do all of those things, you know? And I'm speaking to myself as much as you, because I do the same shit. I'm like, always, I don't know, I always think where I'm like, yeah, I should really do that. Well, fucking do it then. Do you know what I mean? There's never like, oh yeah, I should. Like, if you're having that thought, do it. It's not, you know, it's not complicated. And again, I know I'm being hypocritical there. I really am speaking to myself here, because I have those thoughts all the time, and it doesn't make any logical sense to not do the things. And there are some people, they just do the things that they're supposed to do. And it's unfathomable to me, but it's real. There are people who are just like, they're like, no, because if I don't do this, then by the end of the year, it will have cost me, you know, an extra £100 and lots of time. So it's better to do it today and to save myself the time in the future. And like, there are people who really think like that, and you can get more like that. You can practice being like that. You can train yourself to think in that way more, and to actually not make the decision you want to make right now. Make the decision that like you want to make for yourself, the best decision for you. You can do that shit. Networking. Well, I suppose I covered networking in another video, sort of, to the best of my abilities. Yeah, I wish... Okay, one thing I didn't mention in that I wish I'd done. Definitely. Oh, this ties in with the long-term thing. I wish I had taken networking more slowly with people, like, because I would reach out to people and I'd just be like, here's some beats, do you want to make a song with me? We should work together, I really like your music. And I think sometimes people are just like, whoa. And I mean, I'm a bit disheartened, because I would often try other ways, and I would just get to know people, support their work, blah blah, and I found it very, very difficult to network and collaborate, even sometimes where I just really want to musically. That's what annoys me. There's a couple of people like where it's like, what the fuck, why don't they want any of these beats? I don't understand. But at the same time, I also used to just like straight away just fucking send people a bunch of shit and be like, we should work together, and they'd sort of be like, what the fuck? Well, I don't know, they wouldn't reply, but I would imagine that was what they were thinking. And yeah, I think in hindsight, had I, especially sometimes with like bigger artists who I'd reach out to, some of them now, I look and I'm like, now would be a really good time to ask them if they want to do this thing, but I've blown it with them. I've been too annoying, and I've asked them too many things, and I've like sent them too many beats. Whereas if for the first 5 or 10 years where I wasn't really up to much, like I wasn't really that good, I had just been like, oh, hey, and just chatting to them and making comments here and sending them the odd email about whatever, or messaging them on Instagram, just like, having friendly, informal chats. Then in 4 or 5 years' time after that, if I was then like, by the way, I've got this new project coming out, do you want to do a verse on this thing? I can give you half the money for it and whatever. Then A, they might be more inclined to want to, and B, to be honest, there's a bit of social pressure on them then, because I know there are people I know who are very friendly to me, and they send me stuff, and to be honest, ordinarily I would ignore it. Like, well, no, I wouldn't ignore it, but like, I never ignore it when people send me things, but I don't know, I'd be less receptive, I would say. Like, sometimes I feel a pressure, and I try and avoid bending to that pressure, but I do sometimes feel a pressure if someone's been like nice to me quite a lot, and I'm kind of friends with them online, and they like send me stuff. I don't want to be a dick, it's uncomfortable to do so. And it makes you give it the time of day more, because you kind of want to like it. Then you sort of like, you're hoping that it's going to be good, because you don't want to be like rude to this person. So, yeah, I think it would have been much better if I'd waited years. And I think the same about podcasting. There's Nick Mullen. I won't pointlessly beat around the bush. Him and quite a few other people as well, actually. But I would just like message them all the time and like be like, here's an episode we did, check this out, or like, what do you think of this, or like, will you be on our show? And it'd just be like, no. And I realise in hindsight it's really stupid, because A, it's cool just to talk to people, like, and if there's someone who you like their work and you're interested in them, then it's great to just be able to chat to them and ask them questions. And if you weren't thinking, career-mindedly, you'd probably be quite interested to ask them questions, just to like know about their work and to, whatever, or to maybe like if there's things you think they might like, you see something funny that they would find funny, you send it to them or whatever, and that's just a nice thing to do anyway. But also I know that, if you have that type of relationship with someone for years, or then, for example, then you say, oh, by the way, I've made this short film, maybe you could check it out. They're much more likely to check it out if you haven't already asked them for a bunch of favors. I had, part of the reason I had this realization, I probably shouldn't keep like saying people's names specifically and stuff. Probably compounding the problem. But I really fucking love Yoni Wolf from the band Y. He's like maybe my favorite musician. And I used to just message him all the time. And I always like send him stuff and ask for advice and like sort of try and get him to work on, it was just like probably quite annoying. And I would do it when I was very much at like an amateur level as well. And then I remember he had a song on one of their more recent albums, on the visual album they did, and he's like, the lyric is like, everybody wants something from me, and he's like, everybody wants something from me. And I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, probably everyone he meets wants something from him. Like, all these people are like, hey man, I loved your set, I'm in a band too, can we, and it's just like, ugh, I can imagine it just gets so sickening, because I would always be like, why don't any of my like fucking heroes and shit want to help me, because they want someone to help them. Like, they're not doing that well most of the time, most of them wanted to be like the biggest artist in the world, and they're not usually, because only one person can be that. And right now it's no, I have no idea. It was Kanye, but I guess he's not very fashionable at the moment. Don't know. Who is the biggest artist in the world right now? Difficult. So anyway, yeah. You hear those people outside having fun, laughing at me. That's what I'm so paranoid and insecure. Sometimes the sound of laughing makes me uncomfortable. I'll be like out in public and I hear people laughing and I'm like, what are they laughing at? Why are they laughing at me? What did I do? Fucking narcissistic little freak. Yeah, and most of those people, they wanted to be much bigger than they are, You think of them as successful, they feel like failures most of the time. And I would look at some of my favourite bands and I'd see they'd upload a new thing. And they'd have more views than me, but not that many more. Sometimes, in fact, they would upload a song and it would have less views than some of my most viewed ones. And I would look at them as like way above where I am. And like, to be fair, I mean, they've all made money, it's their job. It's not my fucking job. So they are definitely objectively a lot more successful. But it's strange in a way, like they're often very, very, very disappointed with their lot in life, and often quite understandably, and probably I would be, even if I'd achieved a lot of the success I wanted, because I'm always like, oh, I just want to be able to make it my job. That's bullshit. Actually, I want to be the biggest artist in the world, and I want to be like, incredibly successful, and I want to be like fucking people to like properly appreciate my work to the extent I feel it deserves to be. So even if I was more successful, I would still probably have a lot of gripes. More to be grateful for, but still a lot of gripes. So, bear that in mind, man. These people, like, if you can offer to help them, like, that's good, and even don't expect anything in return, because it's just nice to do that. And in a sense, like, they deserve it, probably. If they've, like, worked their arse off for years and you're, like, behind them, you might fucking give up and go and get, like, a normal, well-paying job. That they haven't given up. They're 10 years ahead of you, and they've stayed committed, and they deserve respect for that, and not to be objectified by people like me sort of trying to I suppose opportunistically trying to get things out of them, even though part of what I wanted to get out of them was just the joy of making things with them. I really felt like, oh, this would be amazing, and I really want to do it. But also there's that inner part of you who's like, meh, like, I don't know if I conveyed the correct emotion there. That seemed more like disgust. I mean, like, like Mr. Burns kind of, but a bit more goblinish, a bit more like a sort of little bit of Gurgi from the Black Cauldron mixed with a bit of Mr. Burns. Yeah. See, I wish I'd been cooler with people like that, but there are a couple of people in that same category who really took the piss and wasted my time, and I wish I'd been a little bit less cool with them. And a great one I heard the other day from John Mulaney on Pete Holmes' podcast. He said the advice he gave Pete was like, don't act like it's not a problem for you to be on the call. Like don't act like don't be so happy to be. It was something like he said, like, don't be so available for the call. Like when there's a call, like, and I would do this if I'd get someone who want to interview me or something. I'd be like, yeah, man, we talk as long as you like, we'll go for hours. I don't mind, whatever you need. And like, you're presenting yourself there as basically, well, it goes without saying what you're presenting yourself there as. And if you're a really big artist and you do that, then it's great. It makes you seem, it's like really gracious, and it's a good thing to do. But realistically, the reason I had all those hours to spare was because I had fuck all else going on. I was so excited for someone to like interview me for their podcast or something that I'd bend over backwards to be accommodating, and it makes people feel ungrateful. It's not nice to think in this way, but it's just the truth. It's just the truth. It's the same as if you're a bit of a dick to people, like, they assume you have some sort of social value a lot of the time. Like, obviously, it's a well-known thing with women, like, men try to, like, be a bit shitty towards them, or at least if they're, like, shrewd about getting women into bed, like, they'll try to be, like, a bit shitty towards them sometimes, or like be a bit like, obviously at the very least everyone will try to be like aloof, and like wait a bit before responding to a text and fucking all that bullshit, because fucking works at the end of the day. And it's the same with stuff like this. If you're like too excited and eager and available, people will assume that's because you've got fuck all going on. Whereas if you're like, yeah, all right, oh yeah, sure, okay, I've got about an hour, then they'll be like, oh my god, thank you, really appreciate your time. Whereas when you're like, yeah, I've got nothing else going on, we can just hang out and be mates, they don't appreciate your time as much generally, unless they're very, very nice and in touch with themselves. But most people realistically are kind of on autopilot, and if you act, I know the same thing, if someone acts like they're busy, I feel bad for taking their time, and then I'm really grateful for them giving me their time. Definitely, like, imagine that in your head, you sort of immediately you feel on the back foot, which then makes you feel kind of, submissive or grateful towards them. So, yeah, that was a good one I heard the other day, and I'm running out of fucking steam for this, so this is going to be part one. If there are any other aspects or anything people might be interested in hearing about, part two, because I'll probably this will probably be like fucking go up to like part 9 or 10, quite frankly, given the subject matter. But right now, it's all I can fucking think of. There'll probably be, in the other ones, it'll probably be more specific, rather than vague general kind of ideas. Maybe there'll be like specific bad decisions that I made. But yeah, I hope you guys are all well. Hope you're all having a nice time. I know how hard it is if you're trying to make a career out of art and you're watching stuff like this and you've actually gotten to the end, man. So yeah, I really do understand, and I feel for you, assuming that's the position you're in, assuming you're not a total dick. I do get it. It's fucking horrible. So remember that you might never make it. I'm not trying to be negative, but you might never make it. And remember to be happy in the rest of your life as well. And to try and appreciate what you do have. I know it's hard. It's embarrassing sometimes, being like, because there's part of you is like, oh, I really appreciate my fans and stuff, and it's like, it makes you feel, I don't know. It's sometimes there's something that feels shameful or embarrassing about being grateful for what you have, because as a part of you, you want more, and you sort of are inclined to be like dismissive about what you do have and the success you have, because it feels embarrassing to be. For me, for example, like there's a lot of things I'm really grateful for, and like the response I've had to music and stuff, but I feel embarrassed to hold on to that as a point of pride. As a 28-year-old man, I feel kind of like ashamed that I'm proud. And I never want to be like, oh, I'm really happy because, fucking 4 people said this was a good song. Because I am, in a way. It's like, it's cool that 4 people even bothered for no reason. They don't even know me, and they liked it. And that's really good. But I'm embarrassed to be like proud of that. And in a career sense, I'm not, I can't say I've achieved a lot, because sometimes I put out a song and like some people really connect with it and feel it emotionally. That's great for me, like, and for them, and I like it, but that's not an achievement in a career sense. So it's hard to appreciate those things, but don't let all the bullshit and the failings stop you from appreciating those things, because those things might fucking disappear one day. That small number of fans might not give a shit, and you might never get the things that you're after. So, yeah, fucking value all of it.